The May morning sun filtered through our bedroom curtains in Phoenix, Arizona, casting golden streaks across the hardwood floor. I stood in front of our full-length mirror, adjusting my navy blue graduation cap for what felt like the 100th time. The tassel kept falling into my eyes, and my hands trembled slightly as I tried to position it correctly. "You're really going through with this circus?" Michael's voice cut through the morning stillness like a blade. He was sitting on the edge of our bed, still in his pajamas, scrolling through his phone with that dismissive expression I'd grown to know so well over the past 4 years. I turned to face him, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's my graduation day, Michael. I've worked for this moment for 4 years." He snorted, not even looking up from his screen. "4 years of what? Playing student while I paid all the bills? Come on, Jessica. You're 32 years old. This whole college thing was just an expensive hobby." The words stung, but they weren't new. I'd heard variations of this speech countless times during my journey through Arizona State University's business program. Every late night I spent studying. Every weekend I missed social events to work on projects. Every small victory I celebrated. Michael had been there with his constant reminders that I was too old, wasting time, and living in a fantasy. "I need to finish getting ready," I said quietly, turning back to the mirror. My reflection showed a woman who looked tired but determined. The past 4 years had aged me, but not in a defeated way. There were lines around my eyes from late nights under fluorescent library lights, but there was also something else there, a spark that hadn't been there when I first walked into that freshman orientation. "You know what's going to happen today, right?" Michael continued, finally setting his phone down. "You're going to sit in that stuffy auditorium with a bunch of 22-year-olds, get handed a piece of paper, and then what? You think some magical job is going to appear? You think everything's suddenly going to change." I smoothed down my graduation gown, the fabric feeling both foreign and familiar against my skin. Maybe things will change. "Jessica, be realistic. You're going to come home tonight, hang that degree on the wall next to your high school diploma, and tomorrow you're still going to be exactly who you were yesterday. This degree means nothing. Nothing." The words hung in the air between us like a challenge. I could feel the familiar weight of doubt trying to settle on my shoulders, the same doubt that had whispered to me during every difficult exam, every rejected internship application, every moment when I wondered if Michael was right, if I was just a middle-aged woman playing dress-up in a young person's world. But today felt different. Today, there was something Michael didn't know. "Maybe you're right," I said, turning around to face him fully. "Maybe this degree means nothing to you, but it means everything to me." His laugh was harsh and humorless. "Sentiment doesn't pay bills, Jessica, and it sure doesn't erase 4 years of you neglecting this marriage, this house, your responsibilities." I picked up my purse and checked that my graduation ticket was still inside. My hands were steadier now. "My responsibilities. You mean like cooking your dinner every night, even after spending 12 hours in classes and at my part-time job? Like doing your laundry even during finals week? Like listening to you tell me I'm wasting my time while I maintained a perfect GPA? Don't get dramatic on me now." Michael stood up, straightening to his full height as if to remind me of the physical space he occupied in our shared life. "I'm just being honest. Someone has to be the adult here." The morning light was getting brighter, and I could hear our neighbor's dog barking in the backyard. Normal sounds of a normal Tuesday morning in our suburban Phoenix neighborhood. But nothing about this morning felt normal to me. "Are you coming to the ceremony?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "I've got a conference call with the West Coast office. Some of us have real jobs that require actual responsibility." He was already walking toward his closet, dismissing me with his movement. "Besides, like I said, it's just theater. You want me to sit in uncomfortable chairs for 3 hours to watch you get a participation trophy." I nodded, absorbing this final rejection. For years of my life, condensed into a participation trophy. For years of him undermining every achievement, questioning every goal, making me feel small and foolish for daring to want more. "I'll see you tonight," I said, heading toward the bedroom door. "Jessica." His voice stopped me at the threshold. When I turned back, his expression had softened slightly, and for a moment I saw a flicker of the man I'd married 8 years ago. "Look, I'm not trying to be cruel. I just don't want you to get your hopes up too high. The world isn't going to suddenly open up for you because you have a college degree. It's competitive out there, and honestly, you're starting pretty late in the game." There was again the casual cruelty disguised as concern. The way he could make doubt sound like love, make limitation sound like protection. "I know," I said quietly. "I know exactly what I'm up against." The drive to the university campus took 45 minutes through Phoenix traffic, and I spent most of it replaying Michael's words. The familiar sting of his doubt mixed with something else, a growing sense of anticipation that I couldn't quite name. My phone buzzed with text messages from my classmates, all excitement and nervous energy, but I couldn't bring myself to join in their celebrations. Instead, I thought about Professor Williams, my business ethics instructor, who had pulled me aside after class 3 weeks ago. Her words echoed in my mind as I navigated the morning traffic. "Jessica, I hope you know how exceptional your work has been. You've brought a perspective to our discussions that only comes from real-life experience. Don't let anyone convince you that starting this journey later makes it less valuable." And then there was Dr. Martinez from my capstone course, who had recommended me for the Academic Achievement Award, though I'd never heard back about whether I'd won. "Your final project was graduate-level work," she'd said. "You should be proud of what you've accomplished." But pride felt dangerous. For 4 years, I'd learned to keep my victories small and private. When I made the dean's list, I'd mentioned it casually over dinner, only to have Michael remind me that academic performance doesn't translate to real-world success. When I was elected to the Student Business Organization's leadership team, he'd asked why I was wasting time on resume padding instead of focusing on my studies. So I'd learned to celebrate quietly. Late-night moments of satisfaction when I submitted a paper I knew was excellent. Small smiles when professors praised my work. The growing confidence that came from proving to myself, again and again, that I belonged in those classrooms. As I pulled into the university parking garage, my phone rang. It was my sister Caroline calling from Oregon. "Today's the big day." Her voice was bright with excitement. "How are you feeling?" "Nervous," I admitted, finding a parking spot on the 3rd level. "And excited. And terrified. Is Michael being supportive?" I paused, listening to the engine tick as it cooled. He's being Michael. Caroline was quiet for a moment. She'd never liked Michael, though she'd grown more diplomatically silent about her feelings over the years. "Well, I'm proud of you. You know that, right? What you've accomplished is incredible. Thank you." The words came out more emotionally than I'd intended. "Jess, are you okay?" I looked at myself in the rearview mirror. My makeup was perfect, my hair was styled, and I was wearing the dress I'd bought specifically for this day, a professional navy blue sheath that made me feel competent and confident. I looked like someone who belonged at a university graduation. I looked like someone who had earned her place there. "Yeah," I said, and for the first time that morning I meant it. "I think I really am okay." After I hung up with Caroline, I sat in the parking garage for a few more minutes, watching other graduates and their families streaming toward the campus. Young students with their parents, older students like me with children and spouses, international students taking selfies in their caps and gowns. Michael's words echoed in my mind. This degree means nothing. But as I watched the joy and pride on the faces around me, as I felt the weight of everything I'd learned and overcome in the past 4 years, I realized something important. The degree might mean nothing to Michael, but it meant everything to me. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. I gathered my purse and graduation program, checked my appearance one more time, and walked toward my future. The university's main auditorium buzzed with the energy of nearly 2,000 people. Families filled the bleacher seats, clutching programs and craning their necks to spot their graduates in the sea of navy blue gowns below. I found my assigned seat in the J section, sandwiched between Jennifer Morrison, a bubbly 22-year-old who'd been my study partner in statistics, and Jerome Butler, a veteran who'd returned to school after his military service. "Can you believe we're actually here?" Jennifer whispered, adjusting her cap for probably the 10th time since we'd taken our seats. Her parents had driven down from Flagstaff, and I'd met them earlier during the pre-ceremony reception. They couldn't stop talking about how proud they were, how Jennifer was the first person in their family to graduate from college. "It feels surreal," I admitted, smoothing my gown over my knees. The fabric was hot under the auditorium lights, and I could feel sweat beginning to form at the back of my neck despite the air conditioning. Jerome leaned over with a grin. "I keep waiting for someone to tell me there's been a mistake, that I need to go back and take more classes." I laughed, recognizing the feeling exactly, or that they're going to check my math and realize I'm actually 3 credits short. The 3 of us had bonded during our final semester, all slightly older than the traditional college crowd, all bringing different life experiences to our studies. Jennifer had worked her way through school as a waitress at a downtown Phoenix restaurant. Jerome was using his GI benefits after serving 2 tours in Afghanistan, and I was the non-traditional student who'd started college at 28 after years of wondering what if. "Is your family here?" Jennifer asked, scanning the crowd. I shook my head. "My husband had to work, and my family lives out of state." The lie came easily now. I'd gotten practiced at making Michael's absence sound reasonable, professional, rather than dismissive. "That sucks," Jerome said, his expression genuinely sympathetic. "This is a big deal. You should have people here cheering for you." Before I could respond, the lights dimmed and Dean Richardson stepped up to the podium. The crowd gradually quieted, though the underlying buzz of excitement remained. Dr. Richardson was a tall woman in her 50s with silver hair and the kind of presence that commanded attention without demanding it. "Welcome, graduates, families, and friends, to Arizona State University's spring commencement ceremony," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the auditorium's sound system. "Today we celebrate not just the completion of academic requirements, but the beginning of new chapters in the lives of our graduates." As she spoke about the journey of education, about the challenges our class had faced, particularly referencing the difficulties of the past few years, I found myself thinking about all the evenings I'd spent in this very auditorium. Study groups that ran late, guest lectures I'd attended even when I was exhausted from work, academic conferences where I'd presented my research. This building had become a second home to me in a way that my actual house never quite felt anymore. "Before we begin calling graduates to receive their diplomas," Dean Richardson continued, "I want to take a moment to recognize some exceptional achievements within this graduating class." My stomach fluttered slightly. I'd been nominated for several awards, but hadn't heard back about any of them. In my experience, no news usually meant disappointment, so I tried not to get my hopes up. "First, I'd like to recognize our graduates who are completing their degrees with summa cum laude honors." She began reading names, and I watched as students stood briefly to be acknowledged. Jennifer squeezed my arm when my name was called, and I stood on slightly shaky legs, feeling the heat of attention from the crowd. When I sat back down, Jennifer was beaming at me. "I didn't know you were summa cum laude. That's incredible." "I wasn't sure it was official until right now," I admitted, feeling a genuine smile spread across my face for the first time all day. Jerome clapped me on the shoulder. "That's some serious academic firepower right there. You should be proud." The word proud hit me unexpectedly. When was the last time I'd allowed myself to feel truly proud of something? Michael had trained me out of celebrating my achievements, convinced me that expressing pride was somehow arrogant or naive. But sitting in that auditorium, surrounded by my classmates, I felt a warm glow of satisfaction that I didn't want to diminish or explain away. Now, Dean Richardson continued, I'd like to recognize this year's recipient of the Outstanding Academic Achievement Award, given to the graduate who has demonstrated exceptional scholarly work, leadership in their field of study, and commitment to academic excellence. My heart was beating faster now, though I told myself it was just the excitement of the ceremony. The Outstanding Academic Achievement Award was the most prestigious academic honor given at graduation, and while Dr. Martinez had recommended me for it, I knew the competition was fierce. This year's recipient maintained a perfect 4.0 GPA while working part-time, contributed original research to our business ethics program, and served as a mentor to younger students throughout their time here. They exemplify the best of what it means to be a lifelong learner and academic achiever. The pause felt eternal. Jennifer grabbed my hand and squeezed it hard. The recipient of this year's Outstanding Academic Achievement Award is Jessica Thompson. The sound of my name echoed through the auditorium like something from a dream. For a moment, I couldn't move. Jennifer was shaking my arm, Jerome was cheering, and the entire auditorium was applauding, but I felt frozen in place. Go. Jennifer whispered urgently. That's you. Go. I stood on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else and began walking toward the stage. The pathway between the rows of seats seemed to stretch forever, and I was acutely aware of every step, every breath, every face turning to look at me as I passed. As I climbed the steps to the stage, I could see the crowd more clearly. Hundreds of families, all applauding for me, all witnessing this moment that Michael had dismissed as meaningless theater. Dean Richardson was waiting with a plaque and a genuinely warm smile. Congratulations, Jessica, she said as she handed me the award. Your professors speak of you with such admiration. You should be incredibly proud of what you've accomplished. That word again, proud. As I held the plaque and looked out at the sea of faces, I realized that I was proud. Deeply, genuinely, unapologetically proud. For years of work, for years of being told I was too old, too late, too naive, and here I was being recognized for academic excellence at one of the largest universities in the country. Thank you, I managed to say, my voice steadier than I expected. This means more to me than you can know. As I walked back to my seat, the applause continued, and I caught sight of my reflection in one of the auditorium's glass doors. I looked different than I had that morning. I stood straighter, smiled broader, carried myself like someone who belonged exactly where she was. When I reached my row, Jennifer threw her arms around me before I could even sit down. You're amazing, she whispered fiercely. I can't believe you didn't tell us you were up for the big award. I didn't want to jinx it, I said, settling back into my seat with the plaque resting on my lap. The metal felt warm and solid in my hands. Physical proof of something I'd achieved through my own effort and determination. Jerome leaned over again. So, what's next for the academic superstar? The question caught me off guard. What was next? For 4 years, I'd been so focused on getting to this moment that I hadn't allowed myself to think too far beyond it. Michael's constant reminders that my degree was worthless had made me defensive about making plans, hesitant to voice dreams that might be shot down. But sitting there, holding tangible proof of my academic excellence, I felt something shift inside me. For the first time in years, the future felt full of possibilities rather than limitations. I'm not sure yet, I said honestly, but I think I'm ready to find out. The ceremony continued with more awards and recognitions, but I found it hard to focus on the other presentations. My mind kept drifting to Michael's words from that morning. This degree means nothing. Looking down at the Outstanding Academic Achievement Award in my lap, I realized how fundamentally wrong he'd been. This degree meant everything. It represented 4 years of growth, discovery, and proving to myself that I was capable of far more than I'd ever imagined. It meant I was ready for whatever came next. The individual diploma presentation began with the A's, and I watched as student after student crossed the stage to shake hands with Dean Richardson and receive their degree. The process was methodical, but emotional. Each name called represented years of work, dreams realized, futures beginning. My phone buzzed in my purse, and I discreetly checked it. A text from Michael. How much longer is this thing? Need to know when you'll be home to start dinner. I stared at the message for a moment, feeling a familiar tightness in my chest. Even now, even during this moment I'd worked toward for 4 years, he was reducing me to my domestic responsibilities. No congratulations on my award. No acknowledgement of what this day meant to me. I turned off my phone and slipped it back into my purse. You okay? Jennifer whispered. She'd been watching me with concern. Yeah, I said and realized I meant it. I'm perfect. As we moved through the alphabet, my nervous energy began to transform into something else, anticipation mixed with a growing sense of confidence. I thought about all the moments that had led to this one. The first day I'd walked onto campus as a 28-year-old freshman, terrified that everyone would see through me, that I'd be exposed as an imposter who didn't belong in higher education. I remembered my first A on a college paper, how I'd stared at the grade written in red ink at the top of the page, hardly believing it was real. Professor Johnson had written a note in the margin. Excellent analysis. You have a real gift for critical thinking. I'd kept that paper in my desk drawer at home, pulling it out on difficult days when Michael's voice in my head got too loud, when I started to doubt whether I was fooling myself about my abilities. The Jays are starting, Jerome said, straightening in his seat. My heart began to beat faster as we approached my row in the alphabet. Jennifer Morrison was called, and I cheered louder than anyone as she bounded across the stage, her genuine joy infectious. She'd worked so hard for this moment, pulling double shifts at the restaurant to pay for textbooks, studying in the break room during her dinner breaks. Then it was my turn. Jessica Thompson. My name echoed through the auditorium, and for a second time that day, I felt the surreal experience of hundreds of people focusing their attention on me. But this time I was ready for it. I stood and walked toward the stage with steady steps, my head held high. As I climbed the steps, I could see Dean Richardson waiting with my diploma, her expression warm and congratulatory. Jessica, she said as I approached, extending her hand. It's been an absolute pleasure having you as part of our university community. Your academic achievements are truly exceptional. Thank you, Dean Richardson. This university changed my life. She handed me the diploma, and we posed for the official photograph. The degree felt substantial in my hands, the embossed university seal catching the stage lights. But as I started to walk toward the stairs to return to my seat, Dean Richardson spoke into the microphone again. Ladies and gentlemen, before Jessica returns to her seat, I'd like to take a moment to share something special with you. I stopped, confused, and turned back toward her. This wasn't part of the standard ceremony protocol. As I mentioned earlier, Jessica is this year's recipient of our Outstanding Academic Achievement Award. But what I didn't mention is that Jessica has also achieved something remarkable that I believe deserves recognition. My stomach fluttered with nervousness and excitement. The entire auditorium was quiet, focused on the stage. Jessica Thompson is graduating as our valedictorian. She has maintained a perfect 4.0 GPA throughout her entire undergraduate program, while working part-time and contributing significantly to our academic community. She represents the very best of what lifelong learning can achieve. The words hit me like a physical force. Valedictorian. The auditorium erupted in applause, but I could barely hear it over the rushing in my ears. Jennifer and Jerome were on their feet in the graduate section, cheering and whistling. Dean Richardson gestured for me to approach the microphone. Jessica, as our valedictorian, would you like to say a few words to your fellow graduates? I walked toward the podium on legs that felt disconnected from my body. Valedictorian. The highest academic honor possible. Me, the woman whose husband had told her that morning that her degree meant nothing. I looked out at the sea of faces, graduates, families, faculty, all waiting to hear what I had to say. For a moment, I thought about Michael, probably still at home, still convinced that this ceremony was meaningless theater. "Thank you, Dean Richardson," I began, my voice carrying clearly through the sound system. "When I started at this university 4 years ago, I was 28 years old and terrified. Terrified that I was too old, that I'd forgotten how to be a student, that I didn't belong in the same classrooms as students 10 years younger than me." A murmur of recognition went through the crowd, other non-traditional students, parents who were thinking about their own deferred dreams. I was told by people close to me that I was wasting my time, that college was for young people, that I should be realistic about my limitations. My voice grew stronger as I spoke. I was told that this degree would mean nothing, that the world wouldn't suddenly open up for me just because I had a piece of paper. I paused, looking down at the diploma in my hands, then back up at the crowd. But they were wrong. This degree means everything. Not because it's a magical key that will unlock doors, though I believe it will, but because of who I became in the process of earning it. I learned that I'm capable of far more than I ever imagined. I learned that it's never too late to grow, to challenge yourself, to refuse to accept other people's limitations as your own truth. The applause started quietly and built as I continued. To my fellow graduates, especially those of you who took a non-traditional path to get here, who faced people who told you it was too late or that you were foolish to dream, you belong here. Your experience, your perspective, your determination, these things don't make you less qualified than younger students. They make you uniquely valuable. I could see people in the audience, wiping their eyes, nodding in recognition. This degree represents every late night in the library, every paper we rewrote until it was perfect, every time we proved to ourselves that we could rise to a challenge. It represents our refusal to accept that our best days were behind us. I held up my diploma. This piece of paper represents transformation. It represents courage. It represents the radical act of believing in yourself when other people don't believe in you. The standing ovation started in the graduate section and spread throughout the entire auditorium. I stood at the podium, overwhelmed by the response, holding my diploma and my award, feeling more like myself than I had in years. As the applause died down, I said, "Congratulations to all of us. We did it." I walked back to my seat on steady legs, my head high, carrying myself like someone who had just discovered her own strength. When I reached my row, Jennifer threw her arms around me again. "That was incredible," she whispered. "You're valedictorian. You're the valedictorian." Jerome was shaking his head in amazement. I sat next to the valedictorian for an entire semester and had no idea. "You're full of surprises, Jessica." As I settled back into my seat, I felt my phone buzz again. Without thinking, I pulled it out and glanced at the screen. Another text from Michael. "Seriously, when is this over? I'm getting hungry and there's nothing in the fridge." I stared at the message for a long moment, then slowly deleted it without responding. For the first time in years, what Michael wanted seemed completely irrelevant to what I was experiencing. The ceremony continued around me, but I was floating in a bubble of realization. I was the valedictorian of my graduating class at Arizona State University, the student with the highest academic achievement, the woman who had stood on that stage and inspired other people with her words, the same woman whose husband had told her that morning that her degree meant nothing. I thought about driving home, about walking into our house where Michael would be waiting, probably irritated that the ceremony had run long, ready to return to our normal routine where my achievements were minimized and my dreams were treated as inconveniences. But I wasn't the same woman who had left the house that morning. The woman sitting in this auditorium holding a diploma and an outstanding academic achievement award, the woman who had just given a speech as valedictorian, was someone different, someone stronger, someone who finally understood her own worth. As the ceremony moved toward its conclusion, I realized that Michael had been right about one thing. Everything was about to change, just not in the way he'd expected. The post-graduation reception was a blur of congratulations, photo requests, and business card exchanges. Fellow graduates wanted selfies with the valedictorian. Professors who had taught me over the years stopped by to express their pride, and several parents of other students approached me to say my speech had moved them. "Have you given any thought to graduate school?" Dr. Martinez asked as she handed me a piece of cake. "With your academic record, you'd be a strong candidate for some excellent MBA programs." 6 months ago, I would have automatically deflected the suggestion, already hearing Michael's voice in my head cataloging all the reasons why more education would be impractical, expensive, selfish. But today, standing in the university's reception hall with my diploma in one hand and my outstanding academic achievement award in the other, I found myself actually considering the possibility. "I might be interested in that," I said, surprising myself with how easily the words came out. "Could you email me some information about programs you'd recommend?" "Absolutely. And Jessica, don't feel pressured to make any quick decisions. You've accomplished something remarkable here. Take time to celebrate it and figure out what feels right for your next chapter." As the reception wound down and other families began to leave, Jennifer found me near the dessert table. "A few of us are going to O'Malley's to keep celebrating," she said. "You should come. You're the valedictorian. We can't have a proper celebration without you." Part of me wanted to go, to extend this feeling of belonging and achievement, to be around people who understood what this day meant. But I knew Michael was waiting, and the longer I delayed going home, the more difficult the conversation would be. "I should probably get home," I said, "but thank you for inviting me. And congratulations, Jennifer. You worked so hard for this." The drive home felt different than the morning trip to campus. Phoenix looked the same, the familiar strip malls and subdivisions, the desert landscape punctuated by palm trees and red tile roofs, but I felt like I was seeing it through different eyes. The eyes of someone who had just been recognized as the top academic performer at a major university. The eyes of someone who had options. Our house looked smaller somehow when I pulled into the driveway. It was a nice house in a nice neighborhood, the kind of place that had represented success and stability when we bought it 5 years ago. But today it felt constrictive, like a space designed for a version of myself that no longer existed. Michael was in the living room watching television when I walked in, still wearing my graduation gown and carrying my diploma and award. "Finally," he said without looking up, "I was starting to think you'd gotten lost. How was the ceremony? Long and boring like I predicted." I set my diploma and award on the coffee table in front of him and sat down in the chair across from the couch. For a moment, I just looked at him, really looked at him. When had he become someone who never looked up when I entered a room? When had his default response to my presence become irritation? "It was actually pretty amazing," I said quietly. Something in my tone made him glance away from the television. His eyes fell on the items I'd placed on the coffee table, and I watched his expression change as he processed what he was seeing. "What's that?" he asked, pointing to the plaque. "The Outstanding Academic Achievement Award. It's given to the graduate with the most exceptional academic record." I kept my voice neutral, factual. He picked up the award and read the inscription, his brow furrowing. "Outstanding Academic Achievement Award, presented to Jessica Thompson in recognition of exceptional scholarly work and academic excellence." He looked up at me. "You won some kind of award?" "Yes, and there's something else." I reached for my diploma and turned it so he could see the gold seal and the Latin inscription. "I graduated as valedictorian Michael. I had the highest GPA in my entire graduating class." The words hung in the air between us. Michael stared at the diploma, then at the award, then back at me. The television continued playing in the background, some sitcom laugh track punctuating the silence. "Valedictorian," he repeated slowly. "I gave a speech to the entire graduating class and their families, about 2,000 people. I was still keeping my voice calm, but I could feel something powerful building inside me. I was recognized in front of all those people for academic excellence. Michael set down the award and leaned back against the couch cushions. Well, that's good, I guess. Congratulations. The response was so inadequate, so dismissive of what I'd accomplished, that I felt something snap inside me. That's it. I asked, That's all you have to say? He shrugged. I mean, it's nice that they gave you an award. But, like I said this morning, it doesn't really change anything, does it? You still need to figure out what you're actually going to do with this degree. I stood up and walked to the window that looked out onto our backyard. The afternoon sun was casting long shadows across the grass, and I could see our neighbor hanging laundry on her line. Normal suburban life continuing as if my entire world hadn't just shifted on its axis. Do you remember what you said to me this morning? I asked without turning around. I said a lot of things this morning. You said my degree means nothing. There was a pause. Jessica, I didn't mean it like that. I just meant that having a degree doesn't guarantee anything in today's job market. I turned to face him. You said this degree means nothing. Those were your exact words. You've been saying variations of that for 4 years. Every time I had an achievement, every time I got excited about something I'd learned or accomplished. I was trying to help you stay realistic. No, the word came out with more force than I'd intended. You were trying to keep me small. You were trying to convince me that my dreams were foolish, that I was too old, that I was wasting my time. Michael's expression shifted, becoming defensive. That's not fair, Jessica. I supported you through 4 years of college. I paid the bills while you played student. I never tried to stop you from going to school. You're right. You never tried to stop me, but you never encouraged me either. You never celebrated with me. You made me feel like I had to apologize for every success, minimize every achievement. I walked over to the coffee table and picked up my award. This represents 4 years of work that you called meaningless. It represents excellence that you told me was impossible at my age. I never said it was impossible. You said I was too old. You said I was being unrealistic. You said I should focus on practical things instead of chasing fantasies. My voice was getting stronger, more confident. But I wasn't chasing fantasies, Michael. I was chasing my potential. And I found it. He stood up, his own voice rising. Fine. You proved me wrong. You got good grades. You won an award. But what now, Jessica? What's the actual plan here? The question that would have paralyzed me that morning now felt like an invitation. I don't know yet, I said, but I'm going to figure it out. Dr. Martinez thinks I should consider graduate school. I've been invited to apply for some competitive MBA programs. More school. Michael's voice was incredulous. Jessica, you're 32 years old. How much more time are you going to spend in classrooms instead of building a real life? This is my real life, I said quietly. Learning is my real life. Growing is my real life. Becoming the person I'm capable of being, that's my real life. I looked around the living room, at the furniture we'd chosen together, the photos of us on vacation, the life we'd built that had started to feel like a cage. I think I need some time to figure out what comes next, I said. Something in my tone made Michael's defensive anger shift to concern. What do you mean? I mean, I need to think about what I want my life to look like now that I know who I really am. Jessica, you're scaring me. What are you saying exactly? I sat back down, but this time I chose the chair that faced him directly instead of the couch where we usually sat together. The physical distance felt symbolic of something larger that was happening between us. I'm saying that I spent 4 years discovering that I'm capable of things I never imagined. I'm smarter than I thought. I'm stronger than I thought. I'm more valuable than I thought. I met his eyes directly, and I've also discovered that I've been living with someone who has spent those same 4 years trying to convince me of the opposite. That's not true. Michael, this morning you told me my degree means nothing. Today I found out I'm the valedictorian of my graduating class at a major university. Can you see the disconnect there?" He was quiet for a long moment, staring at the award on the coffee table. When he finally spoke, his voice was smaller, less defensive. "I guess I was wrong about the academic part. Obviously, you're smarter than I gave you credit for." It was the closest thing to an apology I'd heard from him in years. But somehow it wasn't enough anymore. "It's not just about being smart, Michael. It's about believing I deserve to use that intelligence. It's about believing my dreams matter. It's about believing I'm worth investing in." I picked up my diploma and ran my finger along the embossed university seal. For 4 years, every time I accomplished something, I had to fight through your voice in my head telling me it didn't matter. Do you know how exhausting that is? I was trying to protect you from disappointment. "No," I said firmly. "You were trying to protect yourself from me changing, from me outgrowing this." I gestured around the room. "From me becoming someone who might want more than this life we've built." The silence stretched between us, filled with the weight of 4 years of accumulated resentments and the new clarity that my academic success had brought me. "So what happens now?" Michael asked finally. I looked at him, really looked at him. He seemed smaller somehow, sitting there on our couch, and I realized that my perception of him had been changing gradually over the past 4 years. Each time he dismissed my achievements, each time he minimized my potential, he had diminished himself in my eyes. "I don't know yet," I said honestly, "but I know I can't keep living as if my dreams don't matter. I can't keep apologizing for being ambitious." "I never asked you to apologize. You never had to ask. Every eye roll when I stayed up late studying, every comment about how I was neglecting the house, every reminder that I was being impractical, it all added up to the same message, that what I wanted wasn't important." I stood up and walked to the mantelpiece where our wedding photo sat in a silver frame. We looked so young in that picture, so sure of ourselves and our future together. I wondered if that younger version of myself would recognize the woman I'd become. "I need some time," I said, still looking at the photo. "I need to figure out who I am now and what I want my life to look like." "Are you talking about leaving?" The fear in his voice was palpable. I turned back to face him. "I'm talking about changing. Whether that means leaving depends on whether you're capable of changing too." "What would I need to change?" The question gave me a flicker of hope, but I'd learned to be cautious about hope when it came to Michael. "You'd need to start seeing me as someone whose dreams matter as much as yours do. You'd need to celebrate my successes instead of minimizing them. You'd need to believe in my potential instead of constantly reminding me of my limitations." He was quiet, processing what I'd said. "And most importantly," I continued, "you'd need to understand that the woman who walked across that stage today as valedictorian isn't going to make herself smaller to make you more comfortable." My phone rang, interrupting the heavy silence. It was Jennifer. "Jessica!" Her voice bubbled through the speaker. "I know you said you couldn't come out tonight, but I had to call and tell you there's a recruiter here from Morrison Industries who heard about your valedictorian speech. She wants to talk to you about a position in their executive training program." I felt my heart skip a beat. Morrison Industries was one of Phoenix's most respected companies. Exactly the kind of place I'd dreamed of working, but never thought would be interested in someone with no corporate experience. "She's here?" I asked, aware that Michael was listening to every word. "Yes." She said, "Your speech showed exactly the kind of leadership perspective they look for. Can you come down? She really wants to meet you." I looked at Michael, who was staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said. After I hung up, the room was quiet except for the ticking of the grandfather clock Michael's parents had given us for our 5th anniversary. "You're going," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, I'm going." I walked upstairs to our bedroom and changed out of my graduation gown into the professional dress I'd worn underneath. In the mirror, I looked like someone ready for a job interview, ready for a new beginning. When I came back downstairs, Michael was still sitting on the couch, my diploma in his hands. "Jessica," he said as I gathered my purse and car keys, "I'm sorry. About this morning. About all of it. I didn't understand what this meant to you." I stopped and looked at him. The apology felt genuine, but it also felt like it was coming 4 years too late. "Thank you for saying that," I said. "But, Michael, I need you to understand something. This isn't just about today. This is about who I've discovered I am and who I want to become. The woman who graduated as valedictorian today isn't going to go back to pretending she's less capable than she is. What if I said I was proud of you? What if I said I want to support whatever you decide to do next?" The words I'd wanted to hear for 4 years, finally spoken. But they felt hollow now, motivated by fear rather than genuine belief in me. "I think I need to see that demonstrated rather than just hear it promised," I said gently. I walked toward the door, then turned back one more time. "The degree doesn't mean nothing, Michael. It means everything. And so do I." As I drove back toward the university district where O'Malley's was located, I thought about the conversation with the recruiter waiting for me. 6 hours ago, I'd been a housewife whose husband thought her education was meaningless. Now I was driving to a meeting that could launch a corporate career I'd only dreamed about. My phone buzzed with a text from Caroline. "How was graduation?" "I've been thinking about you all day." I pulled over and called her back. "Caroline, you're not going to believe what happened today." "Tell me everything." As I recounted the day, the award, being named valedictorian, the speech, the job opportunity, one heard my own voice getting stronger and more excited with each detail. "Jessica, I'm so proud of you I could cry," Caroline said when I finished. "You did it. You really did it." "I did, didn't I?" I said, and for the first time all day, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of what I'd accomplished. "Caroline, I think my life is about to change in ways I never imagined." "Good," she said firmly. "It's about time." As I pulled back into traffic, heading toward whatever opportunity waited for me at O'Malley's, I realized that Michael had been wrong about everything except one thing. Everything was about to change. But unlike what he'd predicted that morning, I wasn't scared of that change anymore. I was excited about it. The woman who had stood on that stage as valedictorian, who had inspired 2,000 people with her words about refusing to accept other people's limitations, was ready for whatever came next. And for the first time in years, I believed I deserved whatever good things might be waiting for me. As I drove through the Phoenix evening, my diploma and award sitting on the passenger seat beside me, I felt like I was finally driving toward my real life, the life I'd worked for years to earn and finally had the courage to claim. The degree meant everything, and so did I.